Good morning, everyone. Welcome to part two of a how-to guide for developing a publishable Scholarship of Teaching and Learning project. My name is Valerie O'Loughlin. I am past president of the Human Anatomy and Physiology Society. And these videos are part of my HAPS President's Initiative, which was to expand anatomy and physiology educational research in HAPS. I'd like to take a second to thank our sponsors for the HAPS President's Initiative for this time frame, McGraw Hill and Wiley, and URLs for their materials may be found below here. So for a summary of all of the topics that I'll be discussing for this video, you can access an article that I published in the Advances of Physiology Education. It's called A How-To Guide for Developing a Publishable Scholarship of Teaching Project. I will be going into greater depth in some aspects than the article goes, but if there are some things that I discussed that you'd like to read a little bit more about, I recommend you take a look at that article. And this is an open access article. So today is part two, developing a clear research question and reviewing the educational research literature. So my learning outcomes for you today, after watching this video, you should be able to compare and contrast a vague versus a well-defined educational research question. You should be able to construct a methodical, clear, and precise educational research question. You should be able to identify journals that publish anatomy and physiology educational research. And you should be able to perform a basic educational research literature search using keywords that are as discriminative and provide you as broad an information as possible without being too broad and giving you superfluous results. So the first step is to develop a clear research question or a hypothesis that you want to test in your classroom. A clear research question or a hypothesis should describe your class demographics. How large is your class? Is it for freshmen, sophomores, upperclassmen? Is it a lecture or lab course or a combination? You want to make sure that you avoid using ambiguous and vague terms in your research question, and I'll give you some examples of vague versus well-defined in just a second. You also want to be able to define realistic and achievable objectives that can be examined using appropriate assessment measures. And I'll give you some examples of that in a few minutes. So let's first take a look at a vague versus a clearly defined research question. A vague question may be something like this. What is the optimum number of homework assignments to give to an intro-level anatomy and physiology class? What exactly is the purpose of this question? What are you trying to assess? What do you mean by optimum number? What are you trying to get at? That students understand basic core concepts, that they develop long-term knowledge and retention of the material. So you can see that this general question here doesn't quite ask and define what you were trying to assess. Instead, you may want to rephrase the question to this, which is a little bit more clearly defined. Will the use of interactive learning activities in an anatomy lecture class improve class performance measures, such as mean lecture exam performances and final grades? So here you are looking at some specific assessment measures that you can determine. You have a teaching intervention, which is the interactive learning activities, and you are seeing if they are going to have an effect on these class performance measures. I published this research in the Journal on Excellence in College Teaching, so if you want to look at that article in greater detail, you can access it through the URL listed here. Now, as you're trying to frame your own research question, and you may say, well, what am I going to look at in my class? Think about this. Is there a particularly effective method you've used to increase student learning? And can you document this effectiveness? Can you take a look at past versus present exam scores, and do students tend to do better with this material? Or is there some teaching intervention you've had where students have better long-term retention of the subjects as indicated when they go on to take future courses? Are there things that prevent you from fully achieving your teaching goals? For example, is a lack of prerequisites for your anatomy and physiology class hampering what you were able to do the first few weeks? And perhaps there is something that you can change in those first few weeks of your class that you can assess. Is there something more that you'd simply like to know about the effects of how your course is designed on how your students learn the material? And then are there challenges that you've encountered in the classroom, perhaps classroom incivility, lack of classroom attendance, and are there some things that you would like to improve? These are all things that could be turned around and turned into research questions where you can develop a teaching intervention. So I'd like you to pause and reflect. Pause this video, and then in the next 5 to 10 minutes, write down 1 or 2 research questions that you would like to examine in your own classroom or learning environment. The next step is to review the educational research literature. And for some of you, you may want to flip-flop step 1 and step 2. Some of you may not be able to clearly define a research question until you have a chance to take a look at what literature is out there, and that can help inform your own research question. Now, you may ask, why do I even need to bother to look at the educational research literature? Why can't I simply do my study? Well, if you want to perform your study and perhaps present it or publish it, the reason you want to review the educational research literature is to become more knowledgeable about the research topic. You don't want to reinvent the wheel if someone has done almost the same exact study in an anatomy and physiology classroom. Simply by reading that article, they may be able to provide you with some insights about what you can do in your own class. Secondly, if you're becoming more involved in the educational research genre, you want to be able to place your research within a broader educational research context. You want to be able to compare your research results to others, and not just within the field of anatomy and physiology, but in other STEM disciplines, perhaps in other humanities and social sciences disciplines. And by looking at the educational research literature, you have the potential for developing contacts and collaborators for other larger educational research issues. So as you start to explore the educational research literature, one text that I mentioned in the first video that I want to mention again is How People Learn. Again, you can access this text completely free online. The free PDF URL is listed here. This looks at a variety of disciplines from both kindergarten through 12th grade and higher education and professional schools, and looks at a variety of questions about teaching and learning. So this is a must read prior to going in depth into any educational research project. So if you've developed your research question and now you want to see what have other people done with it, I would recommend reviewing the table of contents over the past few years of a variety of educational research journals. There are some education journals that are devoted to medical education and anatomy and physiology education listed here. Anatomical Sciences Education, Advances in Physiology Education, and CBE Life Sciences Education are all excellent. And then there are some other educational research journals that are not necessarily discipline specific. These include Journal on Excellence in College Teaching and Innovative Higher Education. So let me take a look at the first of these. For Anatomical Sciences Education, what is going on here is as I clicked on this, I'm able to pull up the table of contents for this journal. So when I click on the current issue, I can simply take a look and scroll down. So for example, let's say I want to look at introducing ultrasound in my anatomy classroom, and how would that help? Well, hey, look, here's an article about ultrasound simulator assisted teaching of cardiac anatomy. If I'm thinking about whether or not practice quizzes may help in my class, associations between formative practice quizzes and summative examination outcomes in a medical anatomy course. So those are some examples of some assessments that you can do in your own classroom. CBE, Life Sciences Education, looks at the broader biology field, and again, a very rigorous journal. I recommend you take a look at the table of contents for all of these journals over the past few years. Now, Innovative Higher Education is a non-discipline specific educational research journal, but I strongly recommend you look at these journals as well, because it may be that no one has examined your particular question in an anatomy and physiology classroom, but they may have examined it in a chemistry classroom or in a psychology classroom, in which case it probably will be published in one of these journals. So if I click on the Innovative Higher Education and I simply scroll down, this is taking a look at some of the latest articles, so let me just click on Browse Volumes and Issues, and we will take a look at issue 1. And this one, for example, is taking a look at MOOCs. Those are massive open online courses and how they're affecting online education. Or if you want to see about disciplinary perspectives among academic mothers, that could be an article that is of interest or of use to you. So again, I strongly recommend you take a look at the non-anatomy and physiology education research journals as well, and take a look at their table of contents. Once you've found a couple of articles of interest, you'll want to take a look at their references cited sections to find out more articles. So right here is a screen capture of a table of contents from Anatomical Sciences Education, which as a HAPS member you have free access to. If you click on the Enhanced Article HTML, you will get a link to the entire article as well as hyperlinks to those articles that may have links to their access. This screen capture here on the right is from Advances in Physiology Education, taking a look at some of their journals. So I'm going to click on Advances in Physiology Education to give equal access to both our anatomy and our physiology journals. Again, both Advances in Physiology Education and Anatomical Sciences Education are both excellent A&P journals to publish in anatomy and physiology educational research. So when I clicked on that, I came up with this particular article, a comparison of traditional and engaging lecture methods in a large professional level course. So what they did is they used clicker responses and they tried to see whether using some engaging lecture methods improved various performance measures in the course. So as you see, their reference numbers are numbered. And if I click on this number down here, it will take me down to their references in the citation. Some of these will say you can get the free full text. So when I click on that, this will bring up that particular article since it's from the same journal. If I go down again to these articles, let's take a look at an article that is not from Advances in Physiology Education. Here is, Do Psychological and Study Skill Factors Predict College Outcomes? A meta-analysis. This one is listed in Crossref, Medline, and Web of Science. So if I click on the Web of Science link, it will bring up the abstract, and then it gives me a list of the full text options. So if I click on this, I'm an Indiana University faculty member, so I can check on availability of this article through my own library system. Or it'll tell me whether there are other sources where I can access this full text article. So this is a way where you can do a literature search without ever leaving your office. I strongly recommend that you meet with a librarian affiliated with your university and ask for guidance with an educational research literature search. Trying to find the appropriate keywords to give you a listing of articles that's both broad enough yet not too broad can be a little challenging. You do not want to type in the keywords teaching and learning because you will end up with 4 million references that most of which will not be applicable to what you were trying to look at. A librarian will also be able to tell you about some education-specific abstracts such as ERIC and Education Abstracts Full Text and help you search those abstracts. Again, they can help you with keyword help. And let me give you an example from Indiana University. So if I click on this and bring up the library's main page, they actually have a link on their website called OneSearch at IU. This has combined all of the online databases that Indiana University is subscribed to. So if I click on this, OneSearch at IU, and I say, I want to take a look at how virtual microscopy may affect anatomy and physiology learning. Let me just type in virtual microscopy anatomy. I'll click on search, and I have 461 articles that list virtual microscopy and anatomy. So this lists a variety of articles, some of which I can simply click on and access the entire article itself. So this gives me a wide range of resources that I can examine. Your library may have something similar, and it may just be carefully hidden in their library's webpage. So go talk to a librarian who can help you with some of these literature searches. Finally, don't forget about Google Scholar. So Google Scholar is scholar.google.com. This will access a variety of articles that may be available online. So again, let me do that same search, virtual microscopy anatomy. Click on this, and this will open up a variety of articles, some of which I may be able to get the HTML directly from or from ResearchGate. The PDF may be listed there. Others of these I may actually have to request through interlibrary loan. So that gives you a short review about how to access educational research literature, specifically how to access anatomy and physiology educational research literature. In the next video, I will be talking about determining appropriate methods of assessment for your research question. So see you next time.